Alrighty. Welcome to. Okay, I was just testing my mic. Welcome to episode 265 of Backpacking America. Well, I adjust my pants. Today, we're going to be talking about a very serious topic, and it's called. It revolves around produce. Wait, hold on. Let me just. Ow. Let me just check this really quick. Okay. All right, we're all good in the hood. All right, so anyway, welcome to episode 265 of Backpacking America. And today I wanted to talk about something very important. It's about the need for local produce to make a comeback, especially things called victory gardens. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the concept, but that'll come later. Actually, I'll talk about it now because I might forget. So, victory gardens are basically during World War II to combat food shortages caused by the need for having to feed troops in Europe and in the Pacific Theater. Americans had to sacrifice at home, and what Americans had to do was, to make up for things that they couldn't buy at the store because of the rationing system and the turn-based system that they had in place. You had to grow your own gardens, farm your own chickens, your own cows, all that stuff. Anything you grew on your own, you could keep, but the things at the things that came in through the factories and the bigger farms and all that, they were rationed. So when you got there were these little cards, these little booklets you got during World War II. They were called ration books, and you were only allotted a certain amount of sugar and beef and such per week or per month, depending on the item. Even fuel was rationed. So you would hand in your ration card and then your money for the ration, and that's all you could get for the month or the week. Everything else you were responsible for on your own. So you had to go farm your own stuff. You had to go butcher your own animals, go hunting, that type of deal. And there needs to be a return to not the ration system, but instead the self-sustainable system. Hunting, fishing, growing your own food, canning your own food especially, butchering your own animals. There needs to be a return to that because it's much harder to find healthier food, especially healthier food that isn't getting bought up by big companies and is not expensive. So I've said on previous podcasts before, I'm a big, advocate of healthy foods. They can be expensive, but my logic for that in those episodes, and it remains the same today, is I would rather spend more on food than less on food now and more on medical bills later. I'd rather just take the cut, take the L on certain other aspects of my life, if it means I get to have good food and in a body that can, function properly. That's better for the long-term development of the body and of the human spirit itself. And that's an episode. That's a different episode for another time. But what I really want to focus on today is the need for sustainable agriculture and clean food being ingested daily. So, while I blow my nose, so my whole point here is that I would like to see a return to people having potted plants with tomatoes and peppers and onions, just something so that way there's at least fresh vegetables coming into the house. Now, the important thing to note too is what seeds do I use? Because a lot of the food that we get, right, has seeds in it. And if you take the seeds from that food and you plant it, yeah, it'll grow a tomato plant, but with GMO seeds, with pesticides inside of them. So I'm not much of a seedologist here, but I don't know if those pesticides would carry over into the next plant and the next plant and the next plant, or if the GMO properties, I'm assuming the GMO properties would carry over because they're genetically modified and the seed is a piece of genetic coding that creates a living organism. So you wouldn't get away from the GMO aspect, but maybe the pesticides. The key is to find all natural seeds with no GMO. If you can find non-GMO seeds and you can plant it in non-GMO soil, then you're set. You got some really good healthy food. And then of course there's pest control and all that stuff you got to deal with when you make these plants. But having a source of clean, sustainable food, even if it's a small source, does help in the long run for your health and for your wallet. I mean, if you can get like a dozen tomatoes through your own efforts, maybe you'll save like $5 or $6, and then, you at least have some clean, good food going into your stomach. Whereas, it would have just been another trip to the grocery store. You lost $5 or $6, and then you had to get, ingest all this crap. And then another thing I'd like to say is to support your local farmers. And I would love to see legislation put out that actually, gives a lot of incentives to keep these smaller farms running, because they are essential and they do have generally healthier practices than, the big corporate farms. And they feed a lot of people and they have a lot of different goods. There's a farm down and down by me called Deer Run Farms, I believe, and they have really good baked and farmed products uh, that they sell all year long. They sell pies and quiches and uh, different types of like baked goods during the fall and the winter, and then during the spring and the summer they sell their wares really. I mean, they sell corn, they sell vegetables they grow, they sell everything they grow, or they import it from other farms across the island or the state, that are naturally grown. So I generally, and it's good food too. So I'm totally in support of small farms, one, supporting each other, and two, getting more attention and support from the federal government and kind of drawing away from the big food conglomerates. Yes, we have a lot of people to feed. That is without a doubt. We have a lot of people to feed. But we also have a waste problem where our portion sizes are fucking huge, and there's not a need for that huge amount of serving size. There doesn't need to be, a big plate of food that you're probably not going to eat. Now, on the other hand of that, yes, you get a big plate of food, and some people like to just throw it out or send it away. But we also forget that there are people that, when they get a plate of food at a restaurant, or they get like the big box item at the grocery store, that works for family members, or it's another meal for the next day. So for, even my own parents, like what they'll do is they'll order a big meal at the restaurant, and then they'll save it for the next day. They'll have breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever. And it's just, for $20, $30, you get a nice meal twice, which is pretty cool. But the downside of that is, to keep up with the demand of all that food being produced, and that whole concept of, oh, I'll save it for tomorrow or save it for later, is now you have to have double the food production to keep up with that consumer cost, which means productivity and which means quality is going to decrease. So you're going to have a lot of poor made and produced food products than you would have if you had like the small farm growing it, or you had a local restaurant that sourced its own food locally. The portion sizes are going to be smaller there because they're not under the same constraints as the or expectations as the big farms. Now, what I would say is that one benefit to the big farms is that they're able to service a lot of people, and it's able to allow us to trade our goods all over the world, because now we can export some of those products. But the downside is the chickens, for example, right? They're fed to get so fat and injected with so much steroids that their legs break, and then they just sit there, and all they do is just sit and eat because their legs are broken. And they're pumped full of steroids to get them bigger. An average chicken is supposed to really be like this big. They're like this big in the factories. It's the same thing with the turkeys. Turkeys are like this big. They're really supposed to be like this big, turkeys. And, out in the wild. And that kind of brings us back to like the hunting thing too, right? There's different areas in this country, and not everyone can have a farm, a farm with animals in it. So like I'm thinking New York City, right? So, you're not going to be in Midtown Manhattan with like, a pig farm on the 90th floor of your apartment building. But you can have a couple of tomato plants, pepper plants. And listen, people are spending all their time growing fucking weed and learning about hydroponics to grow fucking weed in their, studio apartment. Maybe they could learn that to grow something that's actually useful, like tomatoes or carrots or asparagus or, I don't know, onions. Like, like there's no motivation to there's more of a motivation to get high than there is a motivation to grow food and survive. And that kind of brings us back to, like, one, everyone's lazy, but two, it kind of brings us to the hunting thing. So a lot of people are turned off by the idea of killing and butchering an animal. And even though they may eat meat products themselves, and don't get me wrong, it is fucking disgusting. Like, I've more like my dad would start the process, and I would kind of watch or just like hold open the wound while he's getting in there. But like, you need to go hunting. Even if you have someone like my dad that's like helping you do it and like getting you used to looking inside of a gutted animal, and it's disgusting, but like, you need to do it. It's a good life skill, and it's gonna end up, saving. It'll save your life, really, because you need to eat natural meats. The meats we eat today from the store are so full of preservatives and byproducts that it's not good for you. Like, there's a difference between grass-fed beef and corn-fed beef. Grass-fed beef is more natural, it's leaner, and it's better for the stomach. If you have cows that are fed with corn and all this other shit, it's going to be a much rougher to digest item. But you have venison. If you go and you kill a deer or a wild boar or bear or something, they eat grass, or they eat like fish, in the case of the bear. The deer are more herbivores. They eat mostly grass. It's a very lean meat. Tough, but if you stew it, it's good. But it's a very lean and healthy meat. It's actually the healthiest meat you could eat because it's very high in protein, it has no fat in it, and there's no preservatives in it. There's no shot of it being preservatives. You can't even domesticate the damn things. So, getting a deer, that's really, one of the best ways to have a freezer full of meat for a couple of months. If not, it depends how often you go to the store and you eat the store meat too. In our case, a deer could last us 6 months to a year. We kind of, we eat our meat, but we don't it's not our main source of meat. But, if you can, and you can go hunting enough and you can get enough deer, you get a hunting party from your family and you each get, a deer. And then if you happen to each get a doe permit, you can get 2 deer each. And that's enough for like half a year to a year if you eat meat every day. If you grow your own food, if you have your own chickens, your own cows, your own pigs, if you have the space for it, especially, you could diversify it a little bit. You may not have to go hunting as much or at all. Even if you have your own chickens, I had neighbors that had chickens. They ate chicken all the time. They had fresh eggs. That's the thing too about chickens. You can get fresh eggs. And that came in handy when eggs were like $12 a carton. There was also the what was I going to say? There's also like cows. You could, if you can get your own cow, do it. But there's, like I said earlier, there's different areas of the country. So in the rural areas, farming and shooting makes much more sense. Farming and shooting your meat makes much more sense. If you're in the cities, you can travel to go do that. You can go to state land and do that during hunting seasons. Much more difficult, obviously, since you live in, the land of the pod, but like, go for it. You can do it. You can also go to fishing. You can go, outside into the Westchester areas, Westchester County. You can go to Nassau County. There's a lot of good spots to fish, even Queens. Again, you got to just make sure the water source isn't contaminated, and then you'll be fine. But, fishing is a great way to get some extra meat, and it's much easier, not easier, but less disgusting to butcher a fish than it is a deer. Trust me, you don't have to cut the asshole of a fish out to rip out the small intestine. It's fucking disgusting. So, but it's a valuable skill, and that's how you butcher meat. Fish, you can fish. If you're in the city, it's much more difficult. If anything, a lot of people in the city, historically have always gotten their food supplied by the farms, and they, the farms rely on the cities for money, and the cities rely on the farms for food. And because of that, they are begrudgingly linked together, because everyone hates, all the farmers hate the city folk, and all the city folk hate the farmers. It's just how it is. Yeah, so there's just like this kind of there's just that animosity, and that's an episode for another day. But there needs to overall be a need for farms and you know both at the individual and maybe at a collective level, and then for hunting, fishing, because a lot of these companies, a lot of like Coca-Cola, Nestle, and oh, I forget the other ones. They're buying up Burt's Bees, Honest Tea, and all the other health food companies, and the other health food companies that aren't bought out, they're pretty expensive, and things are getting tighter. Interest rates are going up, inflation is going up. It's getting contentious again politically. So there's instability. Having your own source of food is a good thing, and looking into that is kind of essential. Now it's difficult if you live in a studio apartment. If you're limited by space, it's very difficult, and that's one of the downsides to what I'm suggesting, because not everyone has the space nor the time to do it. And that's the thing too, is it's not like how it was back in ye olden days during the Victory Garden era, because, there wasn't a mom or a grandpa or a grandma at home, while the husband went out to work. So, they could just tend to all the farm duty, garden duty, and house duties. Now everyone working. So it's very difficult to maintain projects like that, and it's almost like you have to choose one or the other, if you have something that you like to do. It's not easy, but there's got to be some sacrifices made depending on how serious you are about wanting to maintain that health. Now, I'm not saying that all healthy products are, bad or terrible in the supermarket, but you absolutely do have to look at, the nutrition facts. Make sure there's no chemicals in there. Like, I was going to eat, I was at 7-Eleven the other day, and I was going to have Planters peanuts. And there was sucralose in it, and there was something else. There was another chemical in it, and I was like, I'm not eating this. So I had some blue almonds or whatever, Blue Sky almonds. I forget what it was. It's like the blue almond pack, salted, and that it was just simply salt and almond were the only ingredients. That's how you want your food. You only want the seasoning and then the food. You know what I mean? And the seasoning is salt or pepper or both or barbecue sauce or something, just something very simple, not sodium dichlorohyd or whatever the fuck, you want to have something that's going to be healthy and understandable and not chemical. That way you're going to be healthy. And that causes a lot of problems too, especially soy in men. Men should not, that's where the whole term soy boy comes from. Eating soy boosts your estrogen levels. And high estrogen levels in men causes a lot of emotional and physical problems and alterations, essentially destroying them. So it's imperative that men especially avoid soy, and women too, because too much estrogen can also cause similar problems emotionally and physically. So it's important to avoid soy really as much as you can, and making sure that soy is not in or derivatives of soy are not in your food. So soy lecithin, whatever the fuck. Soy, and if there's a chemical name after it, avoid it. It's just bad. Just avoid it. There's just so much stuff you have to look out for. So if you can't grow the food or farm the food or hunt the food or fish the food, at least look at the food, look at what you're getting, and then try to, buy what you can afford and, will not, send you to the hospital 20 years down the line. Now, there's also the, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, there needs to be legislative action done to kind of shift back to this, hey, we should have regular food type of deal, because it's absolutely mind-blowing that people with IBS go to Italy and they eat pasta with red sauce and chicken parmesan and chicken franchise and pizza, and they're fine. They lose weight and their symptoms go away. The quality of the food generally is much better in Italy, in France, anywhere around the world, mostly in Europe, because Europe has much more stringent food inspection laws, and in the United States, we don't. We don't have that. And the excuse is we need to keep up with production and demand. Because if we don't, people are going to starve. Well, there's got to be a way to be quick and satisfy that need, but also have some quality. I mean, there's literal shit in the burgers. There's poop in the burgers. I mean, there was a documentary, actually, an old friend of mine, David Levenstein, rest in peace, buddy. Used to be the general manager at LA News Radio. He mentioned this fake movie where it like references like things that happen in real life, but like doesn't use real names. And basically, the FDA in the movie was accused of, there was some poop in the burgers at McDonald's, in quotes, and the FDA guy was like, listen, like, there's poop in the burgers, we gotta close you down. And the guy from McDonald's is like, close me down? Just turn the grill up to 400 degrees and the poop will cook right out. Yeah, but there's poop in the burgers. Yeah, if you turn up to 400 degrees, the poop will cook right out. It'll be a shitty burger, but the poop will be, pun intended, but the poop will be cooked right out. And, it basically paid the guy off and whatever, just turn the ovens up to 400 degrees and cook the poop out. So that's the problem, though, is that now we have so many people, supposedly, that's their excuse. I think we can still afford to have good, clean, quality food if instead of having a national food source, we had a regionalized food source, where farms focus mostly on their regions, their immediate regions and customer base, rather than a national and even transnational conglomerate and economic plan. But whatever, that's just me. But, now, with the way that things are now, the quality's gone, and it's just quantity. Just produce as much of this shit as possible. We have to keep people fed. But it's causing a huge problem for our health, and people are getting very, very sick and ill, even in their 20s, from just eating all this garbage. So anyway, yes, there's a lot of things we can do at an individual level, but at the end of the day, I really think the government could pass legislation to help small farmers and start pushing away the mega conglomerates like Monsanto. Anyway, thank you for listening to episode 265 of Backpacking America. That was really cool to listen to have you guys listen again. I'll see you guys tomorrow for episode 266. Until next time.